She was crowned the queen of hip-hop soul. But behind the sequins, the spotlight, and the sold-out tours, Mary J. Blige was unraveling. Addiction gripped her. Abuse haunted her. Depression stalked her every step. The industry wanted the hits, but ignored the hurt. And Mary nearly disappeared beneath the weight of it all. But in her darkest hours, she did the unthinkable. She turned her pain into platinum and gave voice to the suffering millions were too afraid to name. Picture the Bronx in January 1971. The subways are rumbling, graffiti is creeping across the walls like an uncontainable language, and the fires of poverty are smoldering in buildings where families stack hope against the odds. This is where Mary Jane Blige takes her first breath. She is born to Cora, a hard-working nurse, and Thomas, a jazz musician and Vietnam veteran, a household where compassion and rhythm are stitched into her DNA, even as hardship shadows every corner. Not the same, we get to carry each other. The Blige family moves often, in search of stability that never quite arrives. For a time, they live in Savannah, Georgia, where the cadence of Southern gospel and the tradition of call-and-response sermons leave an imprint on the young girl. Eventually, they resettle in New York, landing in the Schlabum housing projects of Yonkers. Locals nickname it the slow bomb, a grimly poetic description of a place simmering with tension, where poverty and crime collide daily, and dreams either wither or ignite under pressure. Inside those concrete towers, Mary discovers her first weapon, her voice. It wasn't polished, not yet, but it was big, strong enough to cut through thin walls and hallway arguments, soulful enough to echo the church choirs her mother dragged her to on Sundays. Church gave her discipline, yes, but the streets gave her tone. That unmistakable rasp, that weight of lived experience you hear in her songs decades later. It was forged here, in the fire of survival. And I choose to win. But talent alone wasn't enough. In those days, opportunity rarely came knocking for kids from the projects. You had to break the door down yourself, or pray that fate would lend you a crowbar. That moment came in the most unassuming of places, a shopping mall in White Plains. Picture this, a teenager, shy but determined, stepping into a karaoke booth at the Galleria Mall. Side down, sleep don't come easy. For $2, two crumpled bills she could barely spare, she records Anita Baker's Caught Up in the Rapture. It's raw, a little shaky, but honest. Honest in a way that no studio microphone, no polished engineer could fake. That tape, a cheap cassette with a scratchy teenage voice, becomes the key that unlocks the next chapter of her life. Boy, please believe me. Here's the twist. Music history is often shaped by coincidence, by the right person hearing the right voice at the right time. For Mary, that person was Jeff Redd, an Uptown Records artist who somehow got his hands on the tape. He passes it up the chain to Andre Harrell, the visionary CEO of Uptown. Harrell, known for blending street grit with high-fashion glamour, here's something no one else did. Not just a singer, but a bridge between hip-hop and soul. By 1989, Mary J. Blige is signed, not as a headliner, but as a background vocalist. Still, it's history. She becomes Uptown's youngest artist and its very first female signing. In an industry still dominated by male acts and polished pop stars, she is a raw, uncut diamond. A young woman from Yonkers who's carrying the sound of her block, her church, and her scars, all in the same breath. Think about it. One mall karaoke booth, $2, and a cassette tape changed the course of R&B forever. Mary herself later described that moment as unlikely, almost surreal.
She's been wrote about, she's been talked about constantly.
But that's the thing about stories like hers. They don't follow logic. They follow necessity. She needed music. And music, as it turned out, needed her.
But I gotta face reality.
Behind the scenes, the label execs were unsure at first. Mary wasn't Whitney Houston, gliding effortlessly over soaring ballads. She wasn't Janet Jackson, dancing atop pop hooks with precision. She was different, raspier, moodier, more vulnerable. But that difference would soon become her strength. The streets of Yonkers weren't interested in perfection, they were interested in truth. And Mary J. Blige had truth in abundance. The early days of her career were filled with rehearsals, backup sessions, and small chances to prove herself. But in those moments, she refined not just her voice, but her identity. She was no longer just Mary Jane from the projects. She was a storm building on the horizon of R&B. No one, not even Mary, could have guessed just how quickly that storm would break open the skies of popular music. The Bronx-born girl with a $2 tape was about to become the queen of hip-hop soul. But first, she'd need the right partner in crime, a young, hungry producer named Sean Combs.
Hey, yo, turn me up. My drama, my karma, my...
By the early 1990s, R&B was at a crossroads. The glossy, polished sound of the 80s was still lingering. Ballads perfected for radio, choreography tailored for MTV, but something raw was bubbling underneath. Hip-hop had exploded into the mainstream, reshaping youth culture, fashion, and even politics. The stage was set for a revolution, but nobody expected that revolution to come from a 21-year-old singer out of Yonkers with a voice that could cry and soar in the same breath.
Over the phone, and that you told her.
Enter What's the 411, released in 1992 on Uptown Records, with executive production handled by a then up-and-coming Sean "Puffy" Combs. This wasn't just an album, it was a cultural earthquake.
Yo, what's up? This is Mary. I'm not home. Leave a message. Peace.
Mary J. Blige's debut didn't politely blend hip-hop and R&B. It smashed them together, unfiltered, creating what critics would later call hip-hop soul.
This is Jamie Brown from Sister to Sister Girl. I just heard the record. I loved it.
Behind the scenes, Combs was a master curator. He raided the archives of funk, soul, and hip-hop, layering heavy beats under Mary's vocals. He pulled from street mixtapes and block parties as much as he did from Motown classics.
with bed sheets. You know what I'm looking for.
Mary's raspy, gospel-infused delivery became the missing piece, the humanity that balanced the machine gun snares and thundering bass. Take You Remind Me. It's seductive yet straightforward, with a beat lifted from Patrice Rushen's Remind Me. The song hit #1 on the R&B charts, instantly putting Mary on the map. But it was Real Love that defined the era. Built around a sample from Audio 2's Top Billin', it combined hip-hop swagger with soulful longing. And when Mary appeared in the video, combat boots, oversized baseball jersey, gold hoops, she wasn't styled to look like anyone else. She was the culture, authentic, streetwise, vulnerable, and powerful all at once. It was a stark contrast to the R&B queens who came before her. Whitney Houston had a voice polished to diamond clarity. Janet Jackson had choreography sharper than glass. Mary had pain, and that pain resonated with an audience that was growing tired of perfection. She wasn't an untouchable superstar. She was their sister, their cousin, their reflection. But it wasn't just the music or the image, it was the timing. The early 90s were hungry for something new, something that spoke directly to Black youth navigating the crack epidemic, mass incarceration, and an industry that often commodified culture without reflecting it back authentically. Mary's music was the answer. She sang like she had lived every lyric, and often she had. Behind closed doors at Uptown, there was debate. Could the mainstream handle this? Could a young woman from the projects really sell this blend of vulnerability and edge? But when the numbers rolled in, the doubts disappeared. What's the 411? Peaked at number 6 on the Billboard 200, went triple platinum, and launched Mary J. Blige as the voice of a generation. And yet, even as the industry celebrated her, Mary herself was still battling her demons.
I heard this about this album. You can't be doing this, Mary. You got to get together. Come on, we go.
This is what makes the next chapter of her career even more powerful. Because if What's the 411 was her arrival, My Life was her confession. Released in 1994, My Life wasn't just an album, it was a diary set to beats. Puffy remained behind the boards, but the tone was darker, moodier, and more introspective. Mary opened herself up in ways few artists dared at the time.
I did it all in a week, still incomplete as I stand on.
She sang about depression, about self-medication, about the suffocating weight of a toxic relationship. And she did it with a vulnerability that was almost uncomfortable because it was real. On tracks like I'm Going Down, Mary sounded as though she was tearing herself open in front of the listener. On Be Happy, the title feels ironic, almost pleading, as if happiness was something just out of reach. And the title track, My Life, remains a haunting anthem for anyone who's ever battled inner demons. The story goes that Mary recorded much of the album while in the throes of depression, often arriving to sessions visibly shaken, sometimes crying, sometimes numb. Puffy, sensing the gravity of the material, leaned into it rather than trying to gloss it over. He allowed the imperfections, the cracks in her voice, the heaviness in her delivery, to stay in the mix. Those cracks became the soul of the album. Critics hailed My Life as one of the greatest R&B records ever made. Rolling Stone would later place it among the 500 greatest albums of all time. But to fans, it was more than music. It was survival. For young women navigating abusive relationships, for men fighting addiction, for anyone feeling unseen, Mary J. Blige became a vessel. She gave language to their suffering, and in doing so, offered a form of healing. And the cultural impact? Unmistakable. Without What's the 411 and My Life, there is no blueprint for artists like Alicia Keys, Beyoncé's raw ballads, or even hip-hop-infused singers like Rihanna and Kehlani. Mary wasn't just making hits, she was redrawing the boundaries of what R&B could be. But while the world was embracing her as the queen of hip-hop soul, behind the curtains, Mary was drowning. Success hadn't erased the trauma, it had magnified it. Fame gave her a platform, but it also gave her more demons to battle, with the press watching every stumble. And so, as the 90s rolled on, the question wasn't whether Mary J. Blige could sing, it was whether she could survive her own story. By the dawn of the 2000s, Mary J. Blige had already lived 2 lifetimes. She'd weathered the chaos of the projects, the whiplash of sudden fame, the storm of toxic relationships, and the public battles with addiction.
Girlfriend, she wasn't disrespectful.
The first decade of her career had been a survival manual set to music. But now came the coronation. This was Mary's empire era. The 2001 album No More Drama was more than a collection of songs. It was an exorcism. The title track, built on a sample from the Young and the Restless theme song, became an anthem of release. On stage, Mary sang it with the urgency of someone breaking shackles in real time. Audiences wept. Fans screamed the hook back at her like it was a prayer. The message was clear. This was no longer just Mary's healing, it was ours.
Why am I so emotional?
Behind the scenes, No More Drama was carefully crafted to capture that turning point. Producers like Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, Dr. Dre, and the Neptunes each brought different sonic palettes: lush R&B, West Coast grit, futuristic funk.
You can't take that from me.
But Mary herself was the binding agent. No matter how slick the production, she kept the delivery raw, reminding everyone that the wounds were still fresh. This wasn't reinvention, it was rebirth.
For me, but I know where the story begins.
Then, in 2005, came the thunderclap, the breakthrough. To call it an album is to undersell it. This was a cultural moment, anchored by the powerhouse single Be Without You. The album became a juggernaut.
Cause I can't sleep without you, baby.
That song alone dominated the Billboard R&B hip-hop chart for an unprecedented 15 weeks, becoming one of the most successful R&B singles of all time.
Nothing can replace it. Call a radio if you just can't be without.
What made Be Without You so magnetic? It wasn't just the production, though Rodney Jerkins' lush instrumentation wrapped around Mary's voice like velvet. It was the conviction.
It's so true that, yes, we've been through it, yes, we got rough.
She sang it as if she had already lost, already mourned, and was now clawing back to hope. The track became a wedding staple, a breakup anthem, and a radio mainstay all at once.
Deep in your heart and deep down you know that it's true.
When Mary walked into the 2007 Grammy Awards, she wasn't just an artist, she was a phenomenon. She performed with the confidence of someone who had fought for her place and won. 3 Grammys later, including Best R&B Album, the message was loud and clear. The queen of hip-hop soul had become the empress of emotional truth.
Too long, and I can't be without you, baby.
But Mary's reach didn't stop at music. In 2017, she stunned the film world with Mudbound, Dee Rees's harrowing story of race, poverty, and war in the Mississippi Delta. Mary played Florence Jackson, a quiet but resilient matriarch, stripping away the glamour, even refusing makeup for the role. The performance was transformative. Then history was made. Mary J. Blige became the first person ever nominated for an Academy Award in both acting and songwriting in the same year. Supporting actress for her performance, and Best Original Song for Mighty River. In a single stroke, she redefined what it meant to be a multi-hyphenate. She wasn't just crossing into Hollywood, she was storming the gates.
Gotta face reality.
And if the Oscars proved she could act, the Super Bowl proved she could still command the biggest stage on earth. February 2022, Super Bowl 56 halftime show. Hip-hop royalty lined the stage. Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, Kendrick Lamar.
This ain't love, it's clear to.
But when Mary J. Blige strutted out in white thigh-high boots and a crystal-encrusted bodysuit, the stadium shifted. Family Affair roared across the crowd, followed by the gut punch of No More Drama. She collapsed dramatically at the song's climax, sequins glinting, eyes shut tight, as if the performance had drained her of everything, and the internet lost its mind. Within minutes, she was trending worldwide. Memes, GIFs, and tweets confirmed it. Mary had just stolen the biggest show on television. That same year, Billboard honored her with the Icon Award. And by 2024, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inducted her into its sacred halls, with Method Man and Dr. Dre paying tribute. It wasn't just recognition, it was validation of what fans already knew. Mary wasn't just part of the story of modern music. She was the story.
Gonna make me hurt again.
But what makes Mary's best years so fascinating isn't just the trophies or the chart dominance. It's the infrastructure she built for others. The Strength of a Woman Festival, launched in Atlanta and later expanded to New York, wasn't about her.
I'm going down.
It was about creating space for Black women across music, comedy, and entrepreneurship to thrive. It was a summit, a showcase, and a sisterhood, wrapped into one weekend that pulsed with the energy of empowerment.
About a matter of time before you get loose and start to lose your mind. Cop you.
And while building platforms, Mary was also building characters. In Power Book 2, Ghost, she embodied Monet Tejada, a crime queen with ice in her veins and fire in her heart.
I feel like a fucking groupie.
I knew you was gonna let that nigga hit. Tariq, we raised you better than that.
For a generation who hadn't grown up with What's the 411 or My Life, Monet was their introduction to Mary J. Blige. She wasn't just a voice anymore. She was a presence, larger than life, unmissable, undeniable.
That wasn't my dad. That wasn't my dad. Right, auntie?
Looking back, the 2000s and 2010s weren't just Mary's best years. They were her imperial phase. She turned pain into platinum, resilience into resonance, and vulnerability into victory laps.
When you let go of all the drama in your life.
Where most artists peak and fade, Mary expanded. She conquered. And in doing so, she made one truth impossible to ignore. Mary J. Blige wasn't just surviving anymore. She was ruling.
Yes, so precious.
The mid-1990s should have been Mary J. Blige's victory lap. What's the 411? And My Life had catapulted her from a Yonkers housing project to the top of the Billboard charts.
You make it when you're feeling.
She was hailed as the queen of hip-hop soul, a young woman with the rare ability to turn suffering into soundtracks for an entire generation. But behind the success, the spotlight burned cruelly. Mary's worst years weren't defined by what she sold, but by what it almost cost her to survive. Mary's life during this period was dominated by chaos. Fame had arrived suddenly, brutally, with no instruction manual. Tabloids hounded her, waiting for the next scandal. And at the same time, she was caught in an abusive relationship with singer KCI Haley of Jodeci, a romance the press romanticized, but Mary later described as destructive, even life-threatening. Their volatile partnership was splashed across gossip pages, yet what fans saw on stage was only the surface of the turmoil.
And I can't be without you, baby. And I'll be waiting.
Offstage, drugs and alcohol became both a crutch and a trap. Mary has admitted that she drank heavily and used cocaine to numb the pain. The irony was bitter. She was winning awards for songs like Be Happy, while living in a reality where happiness seemed impossible.
Think about what we've been through, yeah. I get a feeling like it.
She later revealed that depression and self-hatred made her feel like she was sinking. And in the unforgiving glare of the mid-90s music industry, vulnerability wasn't encouraged, it was exploited.
But this is not the end. Ask me how I know, 'cause she is me.
Behind the scenes, Uptown Records and later MCA executives pushed her hard. The music was selling. The image, the tough yet vulnerable street queen, was resonating with fans. Few paused to ask if Mary herself could carry the weight. Recording sessions became grueling marathons, sometimes punctuated by fights with producers or emotional breakdowns. Friends and collaborators recall her arriving late, drained, sometimes broken, but once the mic was on, delivering performances that cut straight to the bone. Her pain-fueled masterpieces like Share My World, 1997, and Mary, 1999, but the toll was staggering. Each record felt like a lifeline, but also like another piece of herself carved out for public consumption. Critics praised her honesty, yet few acknowledged how dangerous it was for a young woman to bear her trauma so publicly while still living inside of it. And then came the marriage. In 2003, Mary wed Kindu Isaacs, a man who would become not only her husband but also her manager. At first, it seemed like stability. Mary often said that marrying Kindu saved her life, pulling her out of addiction and chaos. But over time, the relationship soured. Accusations of infidelity and financial exploitation surfaced. What had once seemed like a safe harbor began to look like another storm.
Like you're supposed to.
Fast forward to 2016, and the implosion is complete. Mary files for divorce. What follows is one of the most public, bitter, and humiliating breakups in music history. Headlines screamed about Isaacs demanding tens of thousands a month in spousal support. Every court filing, every financial detail, every accusation was dissected in the press. For Mary, it wasn't just a legal battle. It was the dismantling of a life she had built.
Never failed you. Don't you get it? Right now we're writing history.
Imagine it. After decades of clawing her way out of addiction, after building an empire of resilience, she was back in the rubble, fighting not only to protect her finances, but her dignity. She later admitted that the divorce left her so broke she had to go on tour just to stay afloat. "I was homeless. I had no money. I had nothing," she confessed in interviews. The queen of hip-hop soul, reduced to starting over once again.
She said a real woman.
But here's the thread that runs through every storm in Mary's life. She doesn't collapse. She alchemizes. Pain becomes art. Heartbreak becomes anthem. Out of the ashes of her divorce, she delivered Strength of a Woman, 2017, an album so searing, so unapologetically direct, it played like both therapy and revenge. Tracks like Thick of It and Set Me Free weren't coded. They were daggers aimed squarely at betrayal. And fans, especially women, saw themselves in her survival yet again. Culturally, this mattered. Mary J. Blige wasn't just another star bouncing back from scandal. She was, by then, a living testimony. Her honesty about abuse, addiction, depression, and financial ruin broke taboos that Black women in the music industry had long been pressured to silence. She gave voice to the voiceless, those trapped in cycles of pain, afraid to speak, unsure how to climb out.
Let loose and set your body free. Leave your situations at the door, so when you...
Even in her worst years, Mary J. Blige did what she had always done. She told the truth. And the truth, however ugly, became her power. But storms don't vanish. They transform. And the woman who nearly drowned in her own battles was about to emerge stronger than ever, armed with Grammys, Oscars, and a cultural influence that no personal tragedy could erase. Because Mary J. Blige's story isn't about falling. It's about what she does every single time she gets back up. Here's the thing about Mary J. Blige. She isn't frozen in the past. She's not a was. She's an is. She's alive, thriving, evolving, and still shaping culture in real time.
I'ma fucking kill you.
Now you've been lying to us our whole fucking lives. I hope you...
When you try to measure her legacy, the numbers are dazzling. 9 Grammy Awards, 2 Academy Award nominations, a Golden Globe nod, the 2024 induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the first artist to be nominated for acting and songwriting Oscars in the same year. It's the kind of resume that cements greatness on paper. But Mary J. Blige's story isn't really written in trophies. It's written in survival, and in what she gave her fans by surviving. Her music turned into a kind of public therapy. For every fan singing along to Be Happy in the 90s or shouting No More Drama in the 2000s, Mary wasn't just performing. She was testifying. She was putting her scars on display so other people could see themselves in her survival. It's why critics call her the queen of hip-hop soul, but fans call her something deeper, a lifeline. And her influence? It spills across generations and genres. Without Mary, there is no blueprint for Alicia Keys weaving classical piano into street soul. There's no template for Beyoncé bearing her marriage struggles in Lemonade. There's no Rihanna fusing grit with glamour, or Kehlani pouring vulnerability into modern R&B. Every artist who's dared to be raw, unpolished, and emotionally naked in their music stands in the space Mary carved out.
G.O.D. and she's confident this is not the end.
Behind the scenes, her legacy is just as intentional. In 2016, she launched the Strength of a Woman Festival and Summit, the first ever all-black, all-women-led festival. Every Mother's Day weekend, it becomes more than a concert. It's a cultural gathering, with panels on finance and entrepreneurship, comedy nights, and powerhouse performances.
Or leave a bad taste in your mouth.
Mary's fingerprints are everywhere in it, curating not just music, but empowerment. She knows her platform isn't just for herself. It's for lifting the next generation.
I've been holding on to make me weak, but I still stay strong.
And then there's her second act on screen. As Monet Tejada in Power Book 2, Ghost, Mary introduced herself to a whole new audience. One that might not have grown up with What's the 411? Or My Life. On television, she is fierce, commanding, unpredictable, the same qualities that defined her music, now translated into performance.
Mom, bitch, what the fuck you say?
What did Kane tell you?
It's a reminder, Mary J. Blige isn't bound to one medium. She is a cultural architect. But perhaps the most telling part of her legacy is what happens when the music plays in rooms she isn't in. A wedding dance to Be Without You. A teenager discovering real love on a streaming playlist and realizing the lyrics are still relevant 30 years later. A woman playing My Life late at night, hearing Mary's voice and finding comfort in knowing someone else has walked through the same shadows. Mary's catalog has aged into something rare. It's not just timeless, it's useful. It continues to heal. And that's the paradox of Mary J. Blige's story. The more she has endured, the more powerful her art has become. She taught her listeners that scars don't mean weakness, they mean survival. That pain isn't the end of the story. It can be the beginning of an anthem.
And could I understand? She's afraid.